Welcome to Looking at Lucasfilm, the podcast with a different perspective on the world of Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and all of the other entities that George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy, and the rest of the team at Lucasfilm have dreamed up over the past 40 years. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and my co-host, the one, the only, Dan Z, are recording on Wednesday, March 18th. Look, folks, I don't need to tell you, if anyone who's been paying attention to the news, what with all of this social distancing and possibly being housebound to, I guess we're all hoping, just to the beginning of April. Yeah. We could all use some good news right about now, have something to look forward to, which is why I am thrilled that as we're starting tonight's show, we have something cool and new to talk about, something that will be arriving on store shelves in October of this year, and that's the Star Wars book, which has been written by Pablo Hidalgo Cole Horton, and this name here seems very familiar for some reason. Wait a minute, Dan, that's your name?
That is me. Yes, I am one of the authors of the Star Wars book. Thank you for asking about it.
We were pre-gaming before the show tonight, and first of all, it's the Star Wars book that's no longer available, right? Because it's already sold out. It was, you got to reveal that you were doing this on Tuesday, yesterday on Twitter, right? And it's clean.
So now if you go to Amazon, at least at the time of this recording, it's currently unavailable because I guess all the pre-order copies that allocated are already gone, which is, honestly insane and mind-blowing. I can't believe it. I cannot believe it.
You and Stephen King. This is amazing. So now, I guess, again, at this point, given that we're months out from the actual physical book, we're not able to really get into too many specifics, but there is the description of the book one could find over at Amazon, which reads as follows. If you want to comprehend the epic and intricate Star Wars saga, this is the book for you. It is a unique and insightful examination of this beloved franchise, including Star Wars, The Mandalorian, Star Wars, The Clone Wars, and Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker. Written by Star Wars experts, including fan favorite Pablo Hidalgo, this book is packed with stunning film and TV stills, illuminating infographics, and curated essays that reveal the mysteries of the Star Wars galaxies. From legendary heroes like Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa to fascinating species like the Wookiees and the Tusken Raiders, this book explores central characters, technology, governments, and events that shape this epic saga. Let's see. This book is divided into key areas: the galaxy, science and technology, the Force, Skywalkers, galactic governments and its dissidents, and galactic denizens. Whether you are a devoted Star Wars fan or a casual reader curious to learn more, the Star Wars book, and by the way, the full title of this thing is The Star Wars Book Expands Your Knowledge of a Galaxy Far, Far Away, is an invaluable roadmap. So 224-page hardcover being published by DK and arriving right now, projected to arrive October 20th, 2020. I say that with some hesitation because you and I, Dan, have discussed, for example, with the Rise of Skywalker art of book, which I think, isn't that supposed to just now be arriving in bookstores?
Yes, it sure is. Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen.
So, again, can you talk... because obviously this has to be thrilling for somebody like you who has studied Star Wars and talked about Star Wars for years and years now, to have this sort of opportunity. And also, Pablo and Cole are kind of the big dogs, aren't they?
Yeah, they've got some pretty serious clout in the Star Wars universe. I mean, obviously both of them have written a lot of books. Pablo, of course, is a standout because he's a key cog in the Lucasfilm story group. And I've chatted with him in person many a time. It's been really, really cool collaborating with these guys. And in fact, Cole told me on Twitter that apparently at Celebration, the new Star Wars author, it's their job to buy drinks for everybody. So I guess come find me and I'll bring my visa. So it's a wonderful thrill. I can honestly say back when there was a Star Wars quiz book back by Rusty Miller that came out after The Empire Strikes Back came out back in 1980. It was a I think he was a 6th or 7th grader. He wrote a Star Wars trivia book. I remember reading that back in 1980, thinking about how lucky he was and how great it would be to actually write a Star Wars book. I've certainly wanted to do it since then easily, and so it's absolutely a dream come true. I feel very blessed and fortunate.
Well, again, honestly, to have this sort of opportunity come along, it couldn't happen to a more deserving, nicer guy. So, very much looking forward to to get my hands on this one come October, and actually kind of feel sorry for you come Star Wars Celebration, because if they get you a Doga's Cantina, you better have a lot of on that feast.
Yeah, well, thank you for the kind words. I really appreciate that. And when that happens, I'll just say that talk to my associate, Mr. Jim Hill. He brought the visa today.
Oh, okay. That's what? Yeah, Nancy calling me. I have to go. Anyway, moving on to other news. I mean, again, obviously, with what's going on all over the world right now, that lots of kids stuck at home, lots of parents desperate to find new things to entertain them, which was kind of nice this past weekend to hear the news that Walt Disney Studios Home Entertainment had decided to move up the digital HD release date of Star Wars Episode 9, The Rise of Skywalker, from Tuesday, March 17th to Sunday, March 15th. And I have my review copy sitting here right now, which, again, I haven't opened yet. And friends have been telling me I really, 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 I mean, it's one thing to look at the film, but it's a 2-hour documentary that goes with this, the Skywalker Legacy. Have you seen this yet, Dan? Or
I haven't. It's killing me not to. But I'm really looking forward to it. I got invited to see it at the El Capitan for a big screening, but of course, at that point we actually had school then, so I didn't get a chance to go. But the people I do know who have seen it have said it's just absolutely stunning. I mean, in 2 hours, I mean that's probably worth the price of admission itself.
Yeah, I agree.
Now, you haven't seen it yet either?
Well, I had this podcast to write. But again, soon as we get this one out the door,
let's make that for our next show to talk about that. That'd be fun.
But what I did find time, to read, not watch. My daughter Alice got me for my 61st birthday a copy of the brand new Cinefix magazine, issue 169. Which not only has a terrific article by Joe Fordham about the rise of Skywalker, it has an equally intriguing article by Jodie Duncan about The Mandalorian. And, again, the weird thing is, think about it, Dan, we've been dealing with a tsunami of info in regard to Mandalorian and the rise of Walker for months now, and you think, okay, there can't be any more stories to share about these two projects, and it turns out, okay, I'm wrong. For example, Joe was unable to unearth about Maz Kanata, that I'm pronouncing his name.
Yes.
Okay, so I loved when this character was introduced in, the Force Awakens. That she was running her own cantina, out at the fringe of space, and then we had that epic battle with the First Order that basically took out the cafe. But for that film, she was done as a CG character. And Dan, did you know when it came time for Rise of Skywalker, J.J. Abrams decided to go a different way with this character?
No, this is completely news to me because it was so effective in The Force Awakens, and all the actors seemed to be pretty on point. So I'm wondering, I mean, because it looked great, I didn't notice a difference, which is a testament to ILM, of course. But was Lupita Nyong'o on the set for this too, or did she only do voice work?
I think she only did voice work this time around because for Rise of Skywalker, what they did with Maz is she was, rather than a CG puppet done after the fact, she was a 4-foot-tall animatronic that was controlled via radio control, as well as a performer using an Exxon Movin motion capture suit.
Because she was motion capture. Lupita actually played the motion capture in episode 7 because they got tips from the great one, Andy Serkis.
Oh, well, again, if you're talking about, a guy who knows his way about, around a performance capture suit, that's obviously Andy.
Right.
But
or Drew Taylor, he's got that too.
Well, that, again, he puts them on backwards, but that's another story.
Yeah.
Anyway, or Inside Out, I forget. Anyway, the Roger Guyette, who, helped handle effects for Rise of Skywalker, talked about how Jay was happy with how we'd created Maz before, but he felt we could get closer to the spirit of Star Wars if we built Maz as a puppet. And what's especially fascinating to me, because we talked on a previous show about what they did to bring Leia, Princess Leia into, General Organa. I'll get it right eventually. To bring General Organa into the Rise of Skywalker, and how taking film that had been shot for The Force Awakens and redoing the hair and the outfit and staying true though to Carrie's performance. But the interesting thing is they talk about how Maz would have a lot of dialogue scenes with Leia in Rise of Skywalker. So that building an animatronic added to the authenticity of those scenes, and Maz wound up according to Neil Scanlon, Maz wound up being the most sophisticated puppet I ever built. And now I feel like I really have to go watch this movie again, because I thought it was CG again.
I did too. Yeah.
Yeah. On the other hand, again, sort of what I love about this particular article is they pop the hood on a number of scenes in the movie, and they were talking about Kylo Ren's. In the first part of the movie, his first interactions with Emperor Palpatine, and if you remember, you've got the Emperor sort of in shadow, but he's in some sort of claw-like that allows him to move up and down and be that much more menacing to Adam Driver in this scene. And well, first of all, they what is it? They talk about how the guys who were building the rig for this thing didn't know. I mean, they were so secret about Ian McDiarmid. McDermott. Yeah. They were so secretive about him coming back to play the Emperor that the guys who were building the rig had no idea. And so here comes Ian on the set, and they're like, "Oh crap! This is a 75-year-old actor who is supposed to be 20 feet up in the air on a rig," and it's just sort of, and you want your act, the performer to be comfortable so he can give the best possible performance. You also want him to be safe. But again, the scene that Jay had envisioned was, again, sort of the Emperor looming over Kylo Ren 20 feet in the air. So they talked to, Dominic Tohey, who, again, worked in the physical effects for Rise of Skywalker. He talked about it was quite a challenge to hold Ian up that high and get the rig comfortable for him to act in, but at the same time keep the claw crane fluid enough so JJ could be, creative with his camera blocking. And so what was helpful here was, of course, that Palpatine has always had those black flowing robes. And so, beneath that robe on that rig, they basically put a bicycle seat in and stirrups. So what, Ian is basically sitting down for much of this performance, and more to the point, he can rest his legs on, he can bend his knees and rest his legs on these stirrups, but they put in a back support, and they did everything they could to make this 75-year-old as comfortable as possible in a scene that had to be hard to shoot. On the other hand, there's that scene about midway through the movie where Luke is talking with Rey about when he and Leia were doing Jedi training together, and
Yes.
You remember the scene.
Oh,
Basically, the
beautifully. Mm-hmm.
helmeted, and then there's a moment where they both remove their helmets, and it's genuinely startling to see a 20-year-old Mark Hamill and a 20-year-old Carrie Fisher. And what was kind of interesting is where they got the footage from to do this. ILM harvested footage from Luke's Dagobah scenes in Empire Strike Back for his vignette, for Luke's vignette in this scene, whereas the footage of Leia, that actually comes from the Ewok village scenes in
Mm-hmm.
Jedi. So,
Yeah, and I always thought that Luke. I thought that Hamill was just de-aged for it. But I guess they did use his scene from The Empire Strikes Back. Whereas with Leia, I knew they'd used Billy Lord as like the body double for that sequence, and they superimposed Carrie Fisher's face from Jedi in that. That one didn't look as effective, but I mean, you could still work. I mean, I can still perfectly picture that scene and put it in the exact scene from Return of the Jedi. I will say, the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker, I interviewed Ray Carson, the author for StarWars.com, and she was really great and really open about a lot of stuff. But the novel expands a lot on Leia's training with Luke. It's actually quite awesome.
Okay, we'll have to seek that out.
Yeah, you'll love it.
Okay. And finally, I know you and I, when we were discussing the Rise of Skywalker, I think you and I both had issues with kind of the overkill when it came to the Sith Star Destroyer fleet that the lots and lots and lots of ships. Well, thanks to the Cinefex magazine, we now know that there are more than 1,000 Sith Star Destroyers in repeated symmetrical formation. The idea is to give you the sense of this amazing fleet that can't be defeated. On the other hand, we also now have a number for the Galactic Alliance fleet. That's when they all call them bursting on screen, Dan, that's more than 16,000 ships. It's the largest string of vessels ever generated for a Star Wars movie. And Dan Loeb, in talking about it, in order to come up with that fleet, we tapped into ships from all Star Wars properties. That includes prequels, Disney projects like Star Tours, and animated series. And now I feel like I have to sit there with the remote in my hand and go frame by frame to see, what's there, what I recognize.
Sure. Well, the racers from Star Wars Resistance are in there. Yeah, there's so much. And even I saw some freeze frames where people would take like green highlight and circle ships, but they're so small. Even if you know it's there, it's sort of hard to tell. But I mean, I know they built all the models for it and put them in there. It's pretty cool how they did that, but my gosh, it's hard to spot, at least for me.
Okay. Well, again, the nice thing is we will all have our hands on, Rise of Skywalker soon. And, the Easter egg hunt will begin.
It's true. And I don't want to alarm everyone, but I just noticed last week that when I read comic books now, I have to wear readers. And I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm there. So I definitely won't spot any of these.
It's any consolation. My daughter called last night, my just turned 26-year-old daughter, and was like, I have to get glasses.
You're welcome.
All functionally blind. Okay, now pivoting to The Mandalorian, lots of great stuff in regard to this Disney Plus series. For example, I know, look, I've talked to Dave Filoni, you've talked to Dave Filoni. He's one of the best, interviews on the planet as far as you're talking with somebody in the Star Wars universe. But he was talking about, he directed Chapter 5 of The Mandalorian, which was, of course, the episode that went back to Tatooine. Did they officially say that was Mos Eisley?
They did.
Oh,
yes,
okay.
They did.
All right, but the interesting thing is that Dave, when he was putting this show together, and again, given that headed back to Mos Eisley, he wanted to make use of George Lucas's favorite characters from the Phantom Menace, which kind of surprisingly, the pit droids.
I know it is interesting.
But yeah, because again, what's interesting is when you see them in that movie, especially the pod race sequence, they really are sort of channeling the Three Stooges. It's very slaps. And what's kind of interesting is the gentleman that they hired, to do this particular, to bring the pit droids back for Chapter 5 of The Mandalorian. Hal Hinkle, his very first job when he was hired by ILM as an animator was to do a run cycle of a pit droid for the Phantom Menace. And so the weird sort of thing, here he is returning to where he started his career. And so he shows Dave the footage that he initially did for Phantom Menace, back in the day. And what was interesting is that both Dave and Jon Favreau looked at it and they said, we'd kind of like the character to be a little less comical in The Mandalorian than they were in The Phantom Menace. And they do really kind of dial them down for, the scene, in the hangar bay. But this one, I know you'll love, Dan, that that there's a scene about midway through when they're out in the Dune Sea and Mando and Toro, that bounty hunter kind of in training character. Toro pulls out a scope and sees in the distance that there are two banthas. And so here's Richard Bluff, who's been assigned to work on the effects of the scene. And they're working on a television schedule and on a television budget. And so it's like, wow, how do I do banthas on a budget? And he got reminded that ILM still had footage from A New Hope that had never been seen. And so they started going through it, and they found this scene that George Lucas himself had shot of banthas for the original Star Wars. And so the weird thing is when he's looking through his scope on The Mandalorian, what he's seeing are banthas that were shot back in 1975 by George Lucas himself. So, for a Star Wars fan, that's really awesome. Kind of, yeah.
That's that connectivity that I think, you can't help but be happy about because it involves George Lucas.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. On the other hand, again, Jon Favreau, really, wanted right out of the gate to The Mandalorian to sort of be special. So when he was working on Chapter 1 of this, limited series, he wanted to use the Blurgs, which evidently were characters that were first introduced to the Star Wars universe back in 1985 with Ewoks Battle for Endor, and had never been seen again. But John's explanation was he wanted to delve into the part of the Star Wars toy box that featured characters that kids had never played with. So, but more to the point, he explained to the team that were doing the Blurgs that, look, I love Star Wars, and I loved how the Tauntauns moved in Empire Strikes Back. And so, he was insisting that, the Blurgs, which were partially done as, practical, thing on the set, partially done as CG, he wanted one scene where they were done as stop motion. And so they then, to get that stop motion, they actually reached out to the guys at Stupid Buddy Studios, which produced a show I know you don't particularly care for, Dan, Star Wars Detours.
Yes, this was when all they were making were parodies. And fortunately, Disney bought them. They started making a serious narrative again.
Yeah, no, I get that. But I'm fascinated by, there are 39 completed episodes of that show that Disney had, the way I picture it, they're sitting on the shelf right next to Song of the South. They're just, they're never getting out,
You think they're in that part of the vault? I don't know. They got to be a little bit closer to the oxygen than that, hopefully.
I don't think so. But then, and yeah, I'm going to need your help on this one, because this is, this is one of those things, these tantalizing stories that get dropped in an article. And what was that about? So again, this is in Jodie Duncan's piece about The Mandalorian, and that this is the quote. Okay. More than a decade ago, George Lucas was readying a live action episodic Star Wars based television series. 50 scripts were written and ready to go. And, and it was one of these things, what ultimately tripped them up was the fact was, face it, Star Wars right from the get-go tells you up front, this happened a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And it was getting that look of a galaxy far, far away on a television budget that ultimately tripped this show up, and it didn't go into production. And I have to ask, Dan, did you ever, so again, the timeline, they're talking more than a decade ago. So 2008, 2009, yes. You were going to the Star Wars celebrations then. You were going to the Star Wars weekends. Did you ever hear any talk about the show?
A lot of talk about it. This is Star Wars Underworld. This was going to be the level 1313 that they used for some of the video games that was on below Coruscant, where all the bounty hunters and gangsters were, and criminals and crime lords. And they had a lot of people working on it, including one of the guys was the mastermind behind the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. Mm-hmm. And he was famously arguing with George Lucas, writing one of these scripts about how Darth Vader might act, which, I don't know how. And then he said, why am I arguing with George Lucas about how Darth Vader acts? Because he's, George Lucas, and he created Darth Vader.
There we go.
So, and then they never actually started filming. Mostly it was because of budgetary concerns. And I always sort of was relieved by that, because I didn't necessarily want an underworld Star Wars. I wanted more optimism and hope. And then ironically, we ended up getting The Mandalorian, which is kind of a hybrid of all of those things. And it obviously, I can't necessarily confirm this, but I feel like some of the ideas hopefully maybe sort of found their way into The Mandalorian. I'm sure it's possible that something inspired some of it.
You just described it. That there's clearly, at least some inspirational material that was drawn. And in fact, what's really great about The Mandalorian is it's found that sweet spot between, a story featuring a bounty hunter character and I think a very uplifting, optimistic, sort of tone for the stories. Of course, come October, when season 2 starts, could all go dark on us, Dan. I hope not. I'm really, really, really looking forward to Mandalorian.
And since it's all filmed already, that's got to be encouraging.
Yeah. But at the same time, let's remember that the very same thing that's impacting the animation industry has got to be impacting the effects industry. That if they're being told that don't come into work or work from home, it's going to be interesting to see if they can deliver on deadline. Anyway, we were just talking about Star Wars weekends, and in a moment we're going to talk about the origin of this seasonal event at Walt Disney World.
Breathe deep. Imagine your legs more limber in Duluth Trading Double Flex Denim. Envision euphorically squatting for that can of suds, bending for your toolbox in a state of bliss, lunging for your laser level on a whole new level. Relax and allow the flex to fill you with ability. Find your inner flex in Double Flex Denim only at Duluth Trading.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
And we're back. And so now, Dan, you got down to any of the Star Wars weekends at Disney's Hollywood Studios or back in the day, Disney MGM?
I did. I got there, I believe it was between seasons 1 and 2 of Clone Wars.
Oh.
Yeah, that sounds right. And that was when I first saw face-to-face actually Eckstein and Dave Filoni. Went to a lot of the stage show stuff where they did interviews and things like that. And was insanely impressed. And honestly, I just sort of happened there. My mom and I went to Disney then, and it was Star Wars weekends, and it worked out perfect. And I thought it was one of the coolest things the theme parks had ever done. It's certainly pretty much a standout. How about you?
Well, I'm trying to remember. I was down when the last one, or the first one happened in '97. I think I was still in Orlando at that time. And it's one of these things where it's like I feel like I would have stronger memory. It's like if I went, I should have stronger memories of this, because people who went to it to this day still talk about it. Whether it's the character interactions or the amazing parade, midway through the day, or as you were talking about, the panels and the chances to get autograph. In fact, I was just looking today on eBay that somebody is selling, I guess, David Prowse and Anthony
Daniels.
They were the celebrities who appeared at the very first one.
That's right. I remember that now.
Yeah, and so the autographed black and whites, I think these were 5x7s that they gave out, are commanding top dollar on eBay these days. But
wow.
But anyway, the interesting thing about it, really, if you're tracing the origin of Star Wars weekend, you kind of have to start over at Epcot first, particularly the seasonal events that Epcot began staging in the early 90s. I mean, and in fact, it's kind of unfortunate that as we're talking, obviously the Disney theme parks are closed, and the gentleman bio reconstruct who does all those wonderful flyovers of the Disney parks has been doing these amazing shots of Epcot in full bloom. I mean, the wonderful ornate, ornamental flower beds that form designs and that sort of thing. And they're at the peak of color, and there's not a single soul or a single tourist in that park. The first Flower and Garden was actually held at Epcot back in '94. It was much shorter. I only ran 38 days, April 29th to June 5th of that year, but it did an impressive thing, Dan. It got Orlando area locals who, at that point, you got to remember, Epcot opened in '82, and the locals would come out if you opened a new ride or a new show. But this got them to come back to see the flower displays, and really boosted the bottom line. So 95, they bring it back, April 28th through June 4th. Again, significantly boosts attendance at Epcot during a time of year when typically attendance, at least back then, was a little soft. And again, got the locals to come out. So jump ahead to 96. And Epcot decides, well, first of all, they're going to extend, Flower and Garden that year, change it from a 5-week to a 6.5-week event. But they're also going to do a second festival. They're going to do Food and Wine, which, it's only 4 weeks and 1 day. You got to walk before you can run. But that's September 28th through October 27th of 96. But you have all of the other theme parks at Walt Disney World, and again at this time you got to remember Disney's Animal Kingdom wouldn't open until April of 1998. So we're talking about the Magic Kingdom and what was then known as Disney MGM. They want to get in on this action as well. So October 19th, 1996, Disney's Hollywood Studios stages the first ABC Super Soap Weekend, 2-day long event. Allows guests to get up close and personal with their favorite performers from All My Children and General Hospital and One Life to Live, and became so popular. It ran till the fall of 2008, and when in kind of an ill-considered move, ABC decided to go with a bunch of on-the-road events called Soap Nation that never had the impact that Super Soap did. But then, of course, by then, ABC's getting out of the soap business, and that's a story for another time.
I was working there, by the way, during that stuff. I was there when, oh my gosh, the most famous soap actress, what's her name? Why can't you just said it?
Lucci.
Yeah, she was there when I was working there. She was very nice.
Yes, well, that's and I've heard that about her, and trust me, Nancy and her mom, along with our good friend Angela Ragno, it was one of these things where, come hell or high water in November, we were, at Disney, MGM for Super Soap Weekend, and I literally was like the, the insertion team for SEAL Team 6. Get them to the park in the morning, and then at the end when they would do the big show in front of the Chinese theater,
sure,
I would show up at the end of the night and collect them, and they would just spend until they went to bed. They would talk about all the wonderful encounters they had with folks. So we did this year after year after year, and also it's worth noting here that, remember, Disney only announced its intention to buy ABC Cap Cities in July of 1995. It took them to February of 1996 to complete the acquisition. So the inaugural Super Soap in October of that year was the first time that Disney demonstrated to the financial community how they intended on synergizing ABC. So, it was kind of a big deal. And meanwhile, over at the Magic Kingdom, they had just completed a redo of Tomorrowland in June of 95, and which is why they thought this would be the perfect time, Dan, to stage the first ever sci-fi event that would happen in and around that theme park, which is why in the summer of 95, the Walt Disney Company bought full-page ads in all sorts of periodicals announcing Contact 96. And this ad, well, first of all, it has a kind of enterprisey sort of ship in the upper right-hand corner. But the thing that you'd find particularly interesting, Dan, is the image of it's a Mickey with Death Star ears, and again, it's just one of these things where it's like, I do not think that thing, the Diego Montoya, I do not think that thing means what you think it means. It's like Mickey should not have Death Star ears. But anyway, here's how the event was described, or promoted, excuse me. The biggest sci-fi event ever is coming into a world of its own. Imagine the ultimate sci-fi vacation, meeting the greats from Star Wars, Star Trek, Lost in Space, and more, sharing the adventures of real-life visionaries and explorers, finding rare and exclusive sci-fi treasures, all in the place where fantasy comes alive. And so what they were trying to do was, of course, sell people on packages to Contact 96. And Patrick would have included 3 nights at a select Disney resort hotel, length of stay admission to the Magic Kingdom, Epcot, and Disney MGM Studios. But here's where it gets interesting, Dan. Seminars and encounters with sci-fi stars, authors, astronauts, and other luminaries. Then unlimited admission to the Sci-Fi Museum auction collectible show, as well as lavish parties. And then access to commemorative merch that's unavailable anywhere. And so, and this is how they summed it up. Contact 96, the first sci-fi convention at Walt Disney World, January 21st to the 23rd, 1996. And so again, you've got to be intrigued by that Star Wars reference, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, this is cool. So it's kind of as you're talking, it's kind of reminding me of these different things you either heard about or read about or were there for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the downside is there's a tiny bit of language at the bottom of the ad that reads, events and celebrities subject to change. Prices may vary, subject to availability. And again, that tiny bit of legalese turned out to be Disney's get out of jail free card for when only 100 people signed up for the vacation packages associated with Contact 96. And to put that in perspective, the special events office had really been expecting the sort of attendance that they got for the official Disneyana convention. In fact, the very first one of those that they held back in September of 1992, 750 people, signed up for the vacation packages. So that, that was kind of the number they were looking for. And when they only got 100 people, they went into the triage mode. So they changed it, Contact 96, from an event that was going to be held at the Contemporary Resort and inside of Tomorrowland, the Tomorrowland section of the Magic Kingdom, to just an event that was primarily held inside the theme park. They also canceled the idea of having any Star Wars-related celebrities at Contact 96, opting instead to have Leonard Nimoy and James Doohan from Star Trek and Billy Mooney and Jonathan Harrison Lost in Space. They were the ones who did panels in the Galactic Theater, and they're the ones who, then interacted with guests at this kind of shrunken sci-fi event. And, so why did Disney cancel, the Star Wars celebrities? Dan, cancel is probably the wrong word. What I should be saying is postpone. Okay, so you remember what happened in August of 1995, right?
Yes. A big change in the world of home entertainment for Star Wars.
And this is the thing. I remember I would go to my friend Arlen Miller's house, and he had this shelf that was all of these infinite variations on the Star Wars, the original trilogy in all of its different formats and such. And so this time around, it was Fox Entertainment announcing that in August of 1995, that this was your final chance to purchase the original Star Wars trilogy on VHS. That, as I understand it, that starting on January 31st of 1996, Fox would stop producing this specific version of the original Star Wars trilogy, which supposedly featured, an exclusive interview with George Lucas.
Leonard Maltin.
Oh, yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
But this was because George was already readying the special editions of New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi.
These interviews, by the way, were the first times publicly where he would talk about, episode 1, 2, and 3, or something that I'm actually going to work on and do. These were the moments where they first kind of leaked that out. I mean, he hardly said anything, but that was when we first kind of got that seed planted.
Wow. Okay. Now, where this gets interesting is now Disney, again, which had a continuing relationship with Lucasfilm, and again, you got to remember, Temple of the Forbidden Eye, Disneyland Parks, Indiana Jones Adventure Ride, that didn't open in the Adventureland section of that theme park till March of 1995. So Disney and Lucas are definitely having conversations during this period. And what had happened was that Disney Parks and Resorts had learned that the special edition of New Hope was going to be released to theaters on January 31st, 1997. And more to the point, it would then be followed in theaters some 3 weeks later by the special edition of Empire Strikes Back, which would open on February 21st, 1997. And then this special theatrical event would come to a close on March 7th, 1997, when the special edition of Return of the Jedi was released to theaters. At least that was the original plan. But much to both Fox's delight and George Lucas's delight, the demand for tickets, especially for Empire, was so strong that they wound up pushing back the theatrical release of the special edition of Return of the Jedi by a full week. It didn't actually arrive in theaters till March 14th, 1997. So anyway, here we are. Disney Parks and Resorts learns basically 2 years in advance about the special editions of New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi being released to theaters in 1997. That's very valuable information to have, especially if you've already got signed contracts with David Prowse and Anthony Daniels, who were supposed to show up for your Contact 96, sci-fi convention. But now are still obligated to show up for, some sort of sci-fi event that Disney will be holding in the not so distant future. So this is why February 21st through March 23rd, 1997, Disney stages the very first Star Wars weekends at what was then known Disney MGM Studios. And the timing, Dan, this was deliberate. The thinking was that, first of all, February 21st was the day, as we just mentioned, that the special edition of Empire Strikes Back was supposed to arrive in theaters. So kicking off this in-park event on that date would supposedly capitalize on the excitement that the special edition of New Hope had already created. And also, this, by picking an end date of March 23rd, well, remember, we were just talking about how initially a special edition of Return of the Jedi was supposed to open in theaters on March 7th, 1997. And the thinking was, okay, it'll have a 2-week run. And at the end of that 2-week run, basically, that's it for the Star Wars audience. So it doesn't make any sense for us to extend any further than that. But out ahead of this, that's, again, to capitalize on the special edition of New Hope, that's when they took the old Endor vendors at Disney MGM and turned it into Tatooine Traders. And in fact, I have to ask, I've heard that in the interview that George does with Leonard Maltin, do you actually get to see concept art or that sort of thing?
Let me think about it. It's been such a long time. I mean, I'm looking over at one of my bookshelves in my studio here, and I can see the VHS tapes. I'll have to watch them and let you know. But as far as I can remember, I think it was just the two of them talking in a dark room with almost like star fields around them.
Okay, because I've had folks who work on the retail side of Disney talk about that. I guess for the change out from Endor vendors to Tatooine Traders, that they brought in concept art that had been created for the prequels, and which then it got very interesting because you'd have Star Wars fans who'd come in and not necessarily buy something, but stand there looking real hard. What am I looking at?
Oh yeah.
So well, anyway, okay. So and again, this thing succeeds, beyond Disney's dream. And the folks at Lucasfilm are happy as well. So, which begs the question: you had this hit thing that happened in the winter of 1997. So why then does Disney Parks and Resorts wait till 2000 before they stage the next Star Wars weekend? And literally, we have to pivot back to Contact 96. That basically the folks at Disney World were worried that if they stage another Star Wars event without there being something like the special edition of New Hope and Empire and Return of the Jedi being released theatrically to sort of catalyze the fan base, that no one was going to come out for another set of Star Wars weekends. And so now, mind you, the people at guest relations were like, wait a minute, we get people in here every day, in the years 1998 and 1999, who are asking, when are you doing another Star Wars weekend? I had such a good time. And so finally, in the spring of 2000, May 5th through the 28th of that year, to be exact, Disney brings Star Wars weekends back. But even then, Disney is hedging its bet. They actually waited to see how Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, did at the box office, which, by the way, Dan, I don't need to tell you, but it was the top grossing film for all of 1999.
That's right.
what was it, $430 million in ticket sales just in North America.
I saw it 13 times in the theater.
Did you really?
Yeah, the last time was at a drive-in.
Wow.
Yep. Oh yeah, I was nuts. I think I still probably am. It is Star Wars after all.
Oh, I would imagine at that point you got really good at picking out Queen Amidala's court.
Yes. I mean, I think I was in my early 20s. It was mid 20s, probably was, college and, disposable income and a lot more time on my hands.
Mm-hmm. No, I just, the weird thing is now that I know, for example, what is it, Keira Knightley?
Yes.
The Pirates of the Caribbean films and that, is a member of her court. Again, every time Phantom Menace comes on, I watch the thing and I try to pick her out.
She's the decoy that is, whenever Padme is on screen with Queen Amidala, that the decoy is always Keira Knightley.
Is it really?
Yeah. Now you know that when you see, you won't be able to unsee it.
No, 2 hours of my life gone now. I have to go confirm that. All right. So, okay. But anyway, so, this film winds up making $924 million worldwide. And so Disney looks at those numbers as, okay, we'll do a second weekend. But even then, Dan, they're playing it safe. They deliberately scheduled the event for May of 2000 because that was 1 month after the VHS version of Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, hit store shelves, and to be specific, April 4th, 2000. And what Disney was hoping was that would prime the pump, so to speak, for people coming down to Orlando for the second set of Star Wars weekends. And again, you want to talk about, a great roll of the dice. First 2 days, the VHS version of Phantom Menace is on sale. They sell 4.5 million copies of the standard pan and scan version, Dan, and an additional 500,000 of the widescreen, which it's going to sound weird, especially today when you sit there with your widescreen television watching everything in widescreen. But it was very controversial back in the day. It's like, why am I paying to have black at the bottom of the screen and black at the top of my screen? It's like you're seeing the whole picture.
Oh, I remember being an advocate for that and people thinking that I was just, drinking the Kool-Aid. But no, it really did make a difference. In fact, I've got both copies. I can see them right now too.
Absolutely. But okay. But which now brings us to the mystery. Okay. So you have those huge sales numbers for the Phantom Menace, VHS. And you have these huge crowds that turn out for the second set of Star Wars weekends at MGM Studios. So why, Dan, does it then take another 11 years for a version of Star Tours, which features the most popular sequence from Phantom Menace, the pod race, to finally open at Disneyland Park or Disney's Hollywood Studios? And I think we should save that story for another Looking at Lucasfilm. But
yeah, that's a great story in and of itself, and nobody tells them like you.
So, well, anyway, I have to ask this because, again, you are so busy with Coffee with Kenobi and Pour Over and teaching and family stuff. How exactly did you find time to write this book?
A lot of late nights, and there were a couple of weekends where I literally locked myself up in my office, or I actually went to a local coffee shop and just sat there for 9 hours and just plugged away.
Dear Lord.
Yeah, it was intense, but it was incredibly fun. I learned a lot about Star Wars and myself through the process, I can tell you that.
Well, again, I cannot wait to get my hands on this book. The Star Wars book are, again, hitting store shelves October 20th, 2020. If all the planets align, folks, and what are the point? The slow boat from China that brings the books over makes it here. But until that time, Dan, until October of this year, where else can they find your Star Wars knowledge?
Sure, thank you. Well, definitely Coffee with Kenobi wherever you can find podcasts. And as of this week, because I'm a teacher and all Illinois schools are shut down for the foreseeable future, I've got a little extra time, theoretically anyway. So I am doing Coffee with Kenobi every single day, a daily Coffee with Kenobi, Monday through Friday. So far, the response has been great. The shows are about a half hour as opposed to the 45 minutes to an hour. I would just give everybody a little bit of an extra Star Wars push during the day to keep the smiles on your faces and help give you a nice distraction from some of the challenges that we're currently facing. And then, of course, you can find me on Twitter at Mr. Zehr, MRZEHR. You can also email me if you have any questions about Star Wars or just want to say hello, danz@coffeewithkenobi.com.
Oh, that's genuinely sweet that you're doing that. That's trust me, we could all use it, an entertaining distraction right about now. And hopefully, entertaining distractions. What we got on this side of the fence? We got Disney Dish with Len Testa. We got Fine Tuning with Drew Taylor. Which, by the way, I'm supposed to remind you, Dan, that he's got that set of John Knoll interviews that he did for Light the Fuse, and evidently there's amazing Star Wars related stories that he shares.
That's great, and Drew is really good at getting people loose and comfortable chatting with him, and he's always got some great stories on that awesome podcast.
Well, that's where the vodka comes in.
That's right. I just said something nice about Drew too. Speaking of vodka.
Okay. What else we got? I Want That with Michelle Valladolid, which is about Disney merch, which has frankly got a little challenging over the last week or two. Mm-hmm. Got Universal Joint with Dustin Fuse. And again, that's another podcast that got kind of interesting over the past week or two. And of course, Marvelous Disney, the one about the Marvel Cinematic Universe that I do with Aaron Adams, the gentleman who edits a lot of the podcasts here on the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network. Tell you what, and again, social media presence, you've got a fairly strong one, right? I mean, I know Twitter, that's where I saw the announcement of your book. Where else can folks find you on social media? Yeah,
Twitter is the best one to reach me. And then Coffee with Kenobi has a social media presence on Pinterest, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook.
Okay. On Jim Hill Media, you can find us on Twitter, and Instagram is Jim Hill Media, and on Facebook at Jim Hill Media News. I still don't understand that one. Anyway, tell you what, folks, we will check back in with a new show in 2 weeks or thereabouts. But until then, if you need a Star Wars fix, go check out the new daily edition of Coffee with Kenobi and pre-order that book. For now, folks, thanks for listening, and Dan and I will be back soon.